I fail to understand how they claim they have this massive surplus, which I left them with almost $6 million in the bank. They got it up to 7, according to Mayor Goins, or 7 point something. They got $21 million in ARPA funds, which they could use for income replacement. Why are they raising our taxes? They raised them twice in the last 4 years, almost almost $400,000 that the city decided to take away from its citizens, its business owners, that they could have reinvested into the community to give to the city, that Mayor Goins and Mr. Strable claim they have so much money. Why are they raising taxes then?
All right.
So, and now you'll give my commitment. I didn't raise them the last 4. I won't raise them the next 4.
Oh, you're okay. So today we're joined by former and possibly future Mayor Brant Walker.
Cory, good to see you again. Thanks for having me.
It's always a pleasure.
Sorry it took me so long.
Oh, it's okay. I completely understand. So before we started, I was literally just talking about how whenever you were mayor of Alton, I moved to Alton from Godfrey. And one of the reasons is because there was so much cool stuff going on in the city. So I want to ask you, from your perspective, what do you remember most fondly about being mayor of Alton? Like, what are some of your accomplishments?
Well, unfortunately, I hate to say one of them is being able to beat 10 floods. Evacuated a marina that had never been evacuated before twice. So, the public safety aspect of it in that regards was good. Being able to work with the police department, implement some community policing policies, and being, I would say, kind of more proactive with the LPRs on the bridge, trying to catch people that may be, bad
LPR?
actors, license plate readers.
Okay.
We were the first community to put those up, and we got a lot of pushback on them, but we were primarily looking for folks that had done felony instances that were crossing our bridge.
I was one of your pushbacks on that, actually.
Yeah, well,
I
somebody said we were going to worry about red light cameras, and I can't remember something else. It's minor stuff. We were more concerned about vehicle thefts, people that had committed a felony that we knew about that was coming to our town. So,
Okay.
And now every other community has LPRs in the bi-state area on the bridges coming across from the St. Louis area.
Little police state for my taste, but I do appreciate where you're coming from.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely helps. It helps us to be proactive. If someone's wishing a bad actor coming across to do ill will in our community, it's better to get them before they, if they had a felony warrant out. I was also really pleased with the ability to do the getting police and building and zoning, where the police actually have the ability to have contact with homeowners on a daily basis. We had a retired police officer, and we had access to a police officer. We needed it every day. So I think being in there and then going through the 2 civil unrest with Brown, which we do mutual aid with Blackjack, so we were kind of on call during that, and also Floyd. It was tremendous getting to work with our police department throughout the 8 years, and then of course working with them and trying to work through COVID's ever-changing situation.
Yeah, it's messy.
Oh my gosh, if you want to talk about that, we can.
Oh,
But
the messy aspect of the COVID thing.
Well, yeah, when the feds had it and everything was locked down, that was one thing when everybody's on the same playing field in the
Yes.
beginning, when nobody knew what was going on. And then when the state got it, they were changing numbers and positivity, and Grafton's open and you're closed, and you got to close St. Peter's and Bowles, but leave Home Depot and Lowe's open. It came to, once we figured out what it was in the beginning, nobody knew. It made sense. But the farther it went along, it just seemed to make less and less sense when we're in a true bi-state area and Missouri's open and we're closed. And then they even got Grafton's open, you're closed. It just, every week the numbers were changing. It was almost impossible to keep up with. But on the fun stuff, it was Small Business Revolution was a highlight.
I love
it was
that.
amazing.
Kidnapping you dressed as a Piasa bird, going up in the fire truck. That was a good time. I enjoyed that.
You were popping up on my memories up in the high lift thing just in the last month or two.
The glitter beard. That was a. Oh man, it was such a
I'll
look.
have to see if I can find it and send it to you.
Oh yeah, no, I've
looked
been
awesome up there.
I saw a lot of the pictures. Making insane threats from a fire truck is a vibe I do want to continue one day in the future. So if you get reelected, just remember, I want to be up in a fire truck yelling at the city sometime, just once or twice. It was so much fun.
We'll see if we can check with the chief and make that happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of those positive things with Small Business Revolution, Travel Channel, Netflix decorating downtown, AARP, Forbes rankings, which equated into was over $116 million of private equity or private financing coming into our community to open up businesses. And a lot of them, there was some big stuff like the mall. That was a big one. But a lot of small businesses started to open up on the Broadway corridor,
Oh,
which gave us a really good diversity of not just a bar district, but shopping, eating, entertainment. So it was really kind of neat to see that really take off. And then the park work and
I mean, can I jump off on the Broadway corridor thing? And
Sure.
I'm going to jump the gun a little bit because one of my questions involves Alton Works, and you brought up the Broadway corridor. It ain't what it used to be, man. I mean, if I'm on the Broadway corridor, there's some places I hit up. I'll hit up Funky Planet because I'm a giant man who loves playing with toys, and my wife has ADHD, so we get a little fun building things there. I used to hit up Luciana's. It's not there anymore. I'll hit up Germania, but it was way easier whenever it had a drive-through going on. Even if it wasn't a perfect drive-through, it was a little easier.
you could drive through. It's my daughter's favorite coffee joint.
Yeah, and then like there's really not much else. I mean, the conservatory's there. It's pretty cool. It's a really nice art bar, like a really cool music scene bar, but like I don't know what like and there's the music shop in Grand Paisa, but other than that, like it's all those shitty window decorations that just say, "Hey, nobody's here. Nobody's doing anything." And I just want to know if you're mayor, are you going to do anything to, yeah, I don't know, spur Alton Works into putting things back in there? Because so far I'm just mad at the things we've lost. Like Jacoby's downtown.
Yep.
Cool. Love that Jacoby found a new home, but it's not the thing that they're named after. Luciana's is in Godfrey. Love Luciana's, but it's not the thing I can just circle to at the farmer's market anymore on my way home.
Epicurean Fair's gone.
Yep. That's another one that's gone.
State Street Market's gone, which I consider that kind of a playthrough into downtown.
Yeah, because
we've
they're
had a lot of businesses close and leave and go somewhere else.
And it's not great. I don't like it. Oh, I also go to Honeybee Vintage, and you know, there's a lot of stuff just going on in Broadway, but it's like few and far between, and it's such an underutilized corridor of our city. Like, what are you going to do if you're mayor about that?
Well, I'd like to get Mr. Simmons in the Alton Works group Inc. I believe, like different numbers, 49, 51. It's in excess of 40 buildings. And usually if you get control of that many buildings, which is basically a good percentage of our Broadway corridor, what is your plan? I mean, there's got to be a plan when you have that many properties. I've owned 8 buildings. That's it. 2 of them are commercial. I have businesses in them. I'm getting ready to put another business in one that I purchased in November, December. But I have a plan for that building. What's the plan? What's the overall plan with 51 buildings? There's got to be an end game when you have that much property. What is it? When you bought that building, what did you see? When I look at a building, and granted, it's nowhere near as big as Alton Works, but if I look at something, I know this is what I want it to be. This is the work that needs to be done. I mean, you know, plumbing, electric, framing, drywall, paint. What will it be when it's done? My question would be, what would it be? When I was in office, we were working with Mr. Simmons' group on the Grand, the Y, and the Stratford.
The 3 things that nobody talks about anymore?
That's where the kickoff was.
Oh, yeah, the 3 things nobody talks about anymore.
Correct.
Okay.
And then my understanding, when COVID hit, they went down the road to that Jacoby Art District area and bought the properties up there. Now there's an innovation center. And
Can you define innovation center? Because like I've heard a lot of buzzwords about it, like incubator and
that's what I heard was an
SIUE.
incubator. And
Yeah.
SIU would be in there, but I don't really know. I don't know who's there. I know SIU has signed something. I don't know if they have other tenants in place.
You and me both, man.
So we were down at the other end on the hotel, the potential YWCA building being upscale condos, and the Grand being a entertainment concert venue. There were the only conversation we had on the other end of Broadway, where he has the Elfkin building, Jacoby Art Center, and the Wedge Bank. He had talked about Park. And, no, those were the conversations. And he talked about
Park.
And he honestly talked about a fish market where the flock is right now. Like fishermen could come in and kind of like, I guess, was it San Francisco or Sandy?
Yeah.
There's a place on the West Coast where they like throw the fish around.
Yeah.
It was something similar to that, but that was just really very cursory. And now it's an innovation station or center.
Yeah, it's a food truck gravel parking lot that was going to be Park, named the Jacoby Arts District after something that's no longer there anymore. It's very complicated. So
And now they've introduced 70 units of mixed income housing with only 70 parking spots. I would like to sit down with them and find out what the real end game is and what do things really look like.
Yeah, no, that's a good plan there. All right. So you covered what you've accomplished whenever you're mayor. Why are you running again?
I really hadn't planned on it.
Okay.
So
What spurred you?
honestly, it's been the 4 shootings literally in my driveway, in my yard, and in front of my house in the last year and a half.
Oh,
My mom also lives on Henry and 7th Street
mm.
in Middletown. She's had 5 shootings, but within a block of her house in the last 4 years. And one of them was the K-9 unit, the officer, which was one of the more recent ones. It's just things seem to have taken a bit of a turn, not for the positive. And when I'm sitting in my house Tuesday at 6 o'clock at night and someone's shooting in my driveway at the neighbor, I'm like, something has definitely changed from when Mayor Goins took office to 3.5, 4 years later. Things do not seem to be on the incline. They seem to be on the decline.
But that you honestly just jumped into another one of the questions I have, which is violence. Violence is a huge issue right now in Alton. A lot of people are talking about it, especially youth violence. So I was wondering what you would bring to the table to subvert that violence.
I mean, specifically youth violence, that would be something that if the city could work more in cooperation with the school district where the youth should be, and through some sort of a partnership with the police and the school district. But I mean, honestly, it's going to take a monumental effort. It's going to have to happen in the home, number one. It's going to have to happen with, I guess, somehow with the city, which is kind of a challenge because with everything else we have going on, I don't really know how we manage the youth that would commit the violence. There's been talk of a youth center or a community center.
Yeah.
I would not mind entering in those conversations, but they would have to be, where is it? How big is it? What does it cost? And what programs will be offered? Who will be doing mentorship in there to outreach these kids that are committing this? So there's a lot. Who staffs it and what programs? So those may be some conversations where we could have a community center that actually does an outreach and perhaps give kids something to do after school, I guess, for lack of a better terms, because we do have a lot of things that kids can do. And we were focused on trying to find more things like offering more youth sports programs through the park system to keep kids busy. We went out and got the movie theater. We were trying to do entertainment like the River Dragons. They have like $2 nights. Movie theater has $5 nights. Splash Pad is free. So we were always looking at things to engage the youth that they said they wanted that might help curb that, but clearly it's not working.
Yeah, and also like adult violence, like what's do you have any idea what's causing an increase in this violence? Because I remember whenever you ran against Dixon and Young, Dixon was talking about how violent crime was going to be on the rise, and now you're here saying violent crime is on the rise, and it's like,
I think
it does seem to be, but what
one of the things
what
we're
can
going to
we
bring
do?
back immediately is crime-free housing.
Okay, can you describe that a little bit?
It ought to be more like safe housing. So one of the bigger industries, probably the biggest industry in our community, is rental property.
There's a lot of problems with that.
So we identified at the time about 70+ % of all the nonsense, crime centered in and around rental property. So we looked to what we could do to proactively prevent this from happening or holding, basically, for lack of a better term, landlords, believe it or not, they don't want to admit it, it's a business.
Yeah.
They don't want to say it's a business. So we actually licensed landlords, and the license is only $100, and we charge $20 per unit. That's how we came to a number of 52%.
I
We
charge
actually
way
had,
more than that.
well, we didn't. Well, here's the problem. If you start charging too much, who pays it? The tenant.
The tenants pay. Yeah.
So we just tried to do it so it was going to be budget neutral, where we could have an attorney in there and have some police officers available and separated economic development and housing. Because if you look at the city, economic development and our housing stock shouldn't be put together.
No.
I'll be ding dang. The first thing they did in the budget when they got in was eliminate that and put economic development housing back together again. The police are out of building and zoning, which made no sense to me, given the fact that it was budget neutral. So basically, it's like if you're a bad business owner. So Cory owns XYZ bar and you get in trouble. We come and say, Cory, you got to quit doing that.
Well, I'm
And
sure
then-
if I had enough money in the city of Alton, I would get away with it.
I'll say it depends who's the mayor. But there's a certain point in time where the city has the ability to go, look, man, you do not have the privilege, because it's not a right. You do not have the privilege with the way you operate in our community. We're going to take your liquor license. So basically the plan was, if we kept getting these bad actors that were having drugs sold, violence committed in and around their properties, we would bring them in, try to work with them. There would have been a court set up which would have been like you could come in and plead your case. Hey, I didn't mean it. It won't happen again. And then if it does happen, then you would lose your license to be a landlord in the community until you could fix the problems.
All right.
Now, that does not mean, say, Cory, you own 20 properties and we're having a real problem with that tenant because she could be trouble.
She is trouble.
I was a neighbor for a while. I know.
Producer Missy instead of a Nicole today.
There you go. So what we do is you don't throw out all the rest of your properties, but if you get other properties that come open, you can no longer rent until we address this problem and you figure out how to fix it.
I see a lot of pros and cons with that. But
we never got to like the crime part of it where, and it took us so long to get it going. We were about 1.5 years in and things started to improve, and then COVID hit and everything got shut down. There went the program. Mayor came in and council agreed with him that crime-free housing was too heavy-handed and it had to be abolished. So they wiped it out. Mostly for us, it was safe housing. We did arrest 3 landlords. I won't say their names, but it wasn't anything to do with crime. It was just deplorable living conditions people were in.
good.
So crime-free housing has the ability to, because my opinion is no one deserves to live in a unsafe, unclean environment.
No.
So when we really started to dig in, because we could just kind of guess before we took office, what is the rental population? It's a lot, but we didn't really know. So we started to actually do an inventory and find out where the crime was, how many landlords were there. I think we came up with like almost 700 different landlords. A lot of them don't live in town. A lot of them were out of state. And a lot of the property was just in deplorable conditions. So that's where we started, and then it fizzled out. But I do believe we were gaining ground. Mr. Cramner and Vince Warlick started the program primarily. We worked some other communities that had it, and now Mr. Cramner runs the crime-free housing in East Alton. And I apologize, I forgot whoever's
Warlick?
running crime-free housing in Wood River. I can't remember the name.
Okay. I
And
mean,
it seems to be effective. It's a good way, and it comes with training. Landlords have to go to training. We're providing background checks for no charge. So it does come with a lot of tools to help you manage a better property if you did not wish to. One of the landlords we arrested, we went into a home that they did call, and there was a hole in the size of the living room that I think there was a 3 or 4 year old in that could have fallen through the floor into the basement. So it's more of a benefit to tenants than it is a detriment to tenants. Unless you wish to do harm in the community, then you don't like it. If you really wish to have a good place to live, a clean place to live, crime-free housing is a bonus all the way around.
I mean, I'm all for throwing some landlords in jail. There is something about your time in office that I did really like addressing violence, and it was championed by your police chief, Jake Simmons.
Okay.
He did the walks against domestic violence, and that's something that like we saw with I don't know if it was domestic violence, but a lot of people associated the death of Roe with domestic violence, but
Roe was a friend.
It was a messy situation. I mean, and we asked Goins why he backed the decision of Tom Hayne not to press charges against the person who was possibly responsible. And I mean, I guess I can ask you that question, but then after that, I'd like to know more about how you plan on addressing like what Jake Simmons would do, like the domestic violence issue, because that's always an undercurrent in this city. Like you can't discuss violence without it. So I was wondering if you could springboard that a little bit into how you felt about the decision not to prosecute the person who might have been responsible for Roe's death, as well as how you intend on like the police department. Was that more of his thing or yours?
What do you mean? Jake, actually, the department heads that we had in place all the way throughout, they would, of course, bring things to us, and it seemed like a good idea, which Jake came up with a lot of good ideas. That was one of them.
I really liked that. I thought it was really cool.
I still believe they have that walk, don't they?
I don't know. I don't have my finger on the pulse like I used to. I just remember how passionate he was, and that was probably my favorite thing about him as a police chief, that and the community policing.
Yeah, Jake was definitely a leader in certain areas. There's no doubt about it. With Roe, I think it's a tragedy all the way around. I personally like Roe. We were friendly. He would say hi when he'd walk by the house. We would chat. It's a tragedy. I don't have the information, of course, that the state's attorney has or the police have, but wish there would have been more information to understand why they didn't charge.
Me too, actually. And yeah, I guess since we're talking about Roe is like a very well-known person in the LGBT community in Alton, and Alton has a really strong LGBT community. Like I've been talking to the other people. I believe it was under your administration. We were listed as one of the best neighborhoods in St. Louis by Out in STL.
Okay.
So I was wondering how, if you're mayor, you'll look after people of the LGBT, especially T persuasion, with federal mandates like very, very harsh, like language is very harsh against trans people, as well as like the immigrant community in Alton, because we have a lot of immigrant business owners too. And it seems like legal residency doesn't always matter. So if you're mayor, how will you address people in the community that might be afraid of like federal mandates or administration stuff?
Yeah, I don't know how to answer the federal mandates or what they'll be when they actually come down,
Right.
because there's a lot of talk, and what they say one day, by the time it gets to you, it's totally different. So
Yes.
we'll have to see. One thing I can tell you, everyone will be treated the same.
Okay.
Because I've asked, what are you going to do for this? I'm going to say, we're doing the same thing for XYZ as we're going to do for ABC.
Have you
We're
been to
gonna
Alton's Pride?
Yeah, I have.
Okay. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
It's a fun event.
Mike, I like Michael Panic quite a bit. And of course, Sissy passed away, and I like
That was
Debbie.
really sad. She
Yeah.
was one of the coolest people.
Really an anchor for our community. They don't get enough credit. Debbie was awesome. Michael, I think he was doing the Marching 100, working with the kids. Just really,
I think he's retiring at the end of the
that's
month
what I
too.
heard. Yeah. That's
End of an era, really.
Yeah. Both very, very good, solid citizens, great business owners, and assets to the community.
Awesome. So you want to continue like the diversity of Alton, because like I said, with the gay people and the trans people of Alton, Alton has a very racist history too. And it's something that doesn't seem to be completely resolved. Like there's still a lot of segregation in Alton. And I was wondering what, as mayor, you have done and will do in the future to address that, because Alton has rich Black communities, rich Black history, and it doesn't always seem like Alton's history and Black history and community and Black community are always integrated. And I think that's one of the weaknesses of our city.
Well, I don't know how to quite answer that, given the fact that I had the first African-American deputy fire chief, first African-American fire chief, first African-American city attorney, first African-American economic development, first African-American director of housing, first African-American chief of staff or corporation counselor, and the first Hispanic heritage with Marcos in office. So
Colitos, yeah,
I had
he's
the
a good
most
dude.
diverse group in the city of the administration in the 200 years of it. I mean, I will qualify this with every single person that I did pick wasn't based strictly on their color. It was based on their ability to do the job. If you look at them, I'll just take Jesse, for example. Medic in the Army, was premier in getting the ambulance service up, EMT. Vince Warlick was housing, retired police officer, knew the community really well. So if you look at every person I picked, Kim, my chief of staff, worked for Congressman Costello, Congressman Enier, and Congressman Boss. She worked for both sides. So she was really terrific in those positions. Everyone I picked was absolutely qualified to do the job. They just so happened to be African American or Hispanic or Caucasian, but it was all based on their ability to do the work. I just happened to get enough, choose wisely enough, or pick the best people, and they just happen to be people of color.
That's awesome. So, I mean, on top of that, how do you think that helps the community itself become more integrated? Like, I appreciate that you had a very diverse cabinet and whatnot, and like, really like that. And I remember that. I thought that was one of the cooler aspects of your entire administration. So, like, how does that trickle down to the community in general? Like, what kind of things should we be doing as a city to make everybody feel like they can commune with everybody?
Well, again, if that one's, I don't know how to exactly answer how people socialize together.
Right.
But if the leadership chooses people that are qualified, and it shows youth or it shows our community that if you do work hard and you get your education or you're good at what you do, that you don't have those ceilings that will prevent you from moving forward in your career. So hopefully if you're a young man and you see a city attorney that did go to law school, that did do a practice and got appointed, or if you do see a fire chief that started off as a firefighter and worked his way all the way up, I think he went to get his paramedic, I can't remember, but worked their way up, that if I work hard, I can also do that. Now, how people choose to socialize, I don't know how to answer that. The only thing I can tell you is if you have an administration that's qualified and you're a younger person, which I was fortunate enough when I grew up, I had a lot of aunts, uncles, people in our neighborhood, because I grew up in the North St. Louis area, North County, which was pretty well integrated. If you're young and you see people that are achieving and working very hard, it definitely sets a precedent for what I should be doing to further myself.
I mean, yeah, I mean, given that flow, like you have to respect Mayor Goins for his position as Alton's first black mayor, even if you are running against him. Like,
Correct.
it's really cool that we live in a city where like a young black kid can look at our city's leadership and be like, wow, there's black fire chief, there's a black mayor, there's a Hispanic police chief. Like, there is nothing that will prevent me in Alton. And I like that. I like that you and the other two candidates actually seem to carry that like ability to be like, you can be whoever you want to be in Alton if you work hard and you keep the city nice.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yeah. So I just got a 5-minute thing. You want to go ahead and take a break?
Yeah,
All right, cool. All right. So we're back. We're back with a former and possibly future Mayor Brant Walker. So I've been noticing something, right? So Goins' campaign has been very, very chill, almost in a way, not decisive. Strabel has a lot of money behind him. I know this because every time I try to watch YouTube, I get to hear him talk about potholes. You have been a little more cutthroat than the others, and like, no shame in the game. I respect how politics work, but I have to ask you something that I asked Ray about. Are you familiar with the phone call that was leaked between Ray Strabel and former Studio 420 business owner Zach Yinger?
I heard it, I think, late last week.
Okay, yeah, it's about time I heard it. Do you know anything about who leaked it? Because that helps you and possibly Goins out a lot.
I do not know who leaked it.
All right.
Because I heard that AI generated. I'm like, I saw something about Walker's camp. I'm like, we did not do that.
Okay.
And simply, if we AI generated it, just simply.
Oh no, he copped to it being real.
Yeah, because
he
just asked Ray if he made the phone call.
He
And
did.
In
He
fact,
admitted
did
to it.
Make
Yes.
the phone call. Then he should have some questions answered.
He did. He said that it was a lot of. He was just trying to get him to sell his buildings to get out of town, and he thought the guy was a degenerate, and the phone call was recorded without his consent. So I was going to ask you. So I was disappointed that Ray brought in the Kyle Holker thing after I warned him he was an unsavory character, in my opinion, and you actually banned him from having that business, correct?
We did not ban him.
Did not ban him. All
so
right,
what we
happened?
would do was, when he would come in at the time with what was going on, I'm responsible for liquor licenses, the treasurer's office. Does the mayor have influence on that decision? I'm not going to lie and say we didn't do it. We did give all the information. We do the background checks from the treasurer's office before they issue business licenses. Was there conversations about what potentially could have happened and what might happen and what this is and what biker gang he was or associated with? Yes, we did. And we definitely had influence on not banning, but stopping that license from being issued.
Okay, so I asked you this at the forum, and you scoffed. You said, "Cory, you really asking me that?" And I like that. That's one of my favorite things about you is you were like outraged that I would even ask. And
yeah, because we were involved in that situation and preventing him from doing business in the city at that time.
So would you do that again?
I would have to know more, and you always want to keep an open mind.
Right.
However, based on the what happened after the council meeting, I can't remember his committee of the whole or the actual council meeting, when the now girlfriend, and that was not Kyle
No, that was somebody I believe who works for him.
Yeah,
or is associated.
That approached the alderwoman. In my opinion, that was outrageous to go up and become threatening and intimidating to the alderperson who spoke her mind of how she felt, what she's entitled to, without having to be intimidated. And that purely was an intimidation move. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I myself had I was a victim of a smear campaign over the weekend involving a group that brought up my childhood trauma with other accusations that were patently false. And it was from a group where his girlfriend was actually in it. Now, I don't know who posted it. It was a fabrication, and it was a very venomous fabrication. So
I would not say that's a good way to go about trying to do business with the community.
no, I wouldn't either. I mean, I'm not exactly like, I'm just some guy, but at the same time, it's rude to treat people like that. And I'm not saying they did it. I'm just saying it's a really strange coincidence. Just a really odd coincidence, which brings me to the other person, Zach Yinger, who was involved in that phone call with Ray, as well as the Studio 420 thing, which Goins and Ray both have told me that they had a hand in helping stop that. And I know for a fact Chief Ford did. And I was wondering how you would handle that, or how you, because I know he's still operating here. and I'm pretty sure he still has a liquor store, the Liquid Courage, Zach Yinger. So I was just wondering how, as a mayor, you would address that, because it was proven that he was selling restricted things to minors through Studio 420, and
Well,
there
now
are
that's
other
closed,
allegations. Yeah, it is now
Okay.
closed after it got raided, but his liquor store, and I don't know why it's open. I know he's associated with it. Maybe his name isn't on the license or something. But I was just wondering how you would handle unsavory things like that if you were mayor.
Like we've done in the past with the Mr. Hulker situation, we would look at it. If it doesn't make sense or it's harming the community, then the license should be withheld or withdrawn.
Okay. All right. Because I think one of the biggest issues I've had is like I've organized a lot of community opposition to things because, the community does care if they know what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be the only way anything gets done. And even then, like, not a lot of things happen. I mean, not saying that a raid and a business being on isn't a lot, but it's
That's
like
a lot.
it is a lot. But
Yeah.
the guy still owns other things. He's still operating in our community.
From my understanding, he owns like 12 other buildings based on what I heard.
Yeah, based on that phone call with Ray. Yeah. So anyway, so that's been like a personal thing of mine because I had to be very open with my childhood trauma yesterday. Did not have a good childhood. I've had to deal with really, really shitty people. And it's turned into a passion for me wanting to keep people in our community safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that I want somebody in that office who is willing to make hard decisions that might piss people off, which is something I'm deeply concerned about with the current administration. But
I think we were fair, but if something wasn't right, we made sure that we tried to limit the impact on the community. So, and you're right, not every decision you're going to make, everyone's going to agree with, but at least with my administration, you know where we stood. And sometimes reasonable people can agree to disagree.
right. And that's one thing that I've heard that's great about your administration. And I experienced myself. You're easy to reach. Like you've given your cell phone to just random constituents to just call you at their leisure to be like, hey, what's up, Mayor? I hate this about this. And you'll talk to them. Even if you don't agree, even if like the problem is not solvable, you will talk to people. And
This is a small town.
yeah,
I mean, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, this isn't a big town. If you lose a personal touch, this is probably not, in my opinion, that you should not be mayor of a small town.
exactly. I absolutely agree with that. Which brings me to another question. Like people can disagree and everything can be normal. The sewer treatment center. So you sold that, and or your administration oversaw the sale of that, I should
We
say.
came into it, it was underway when I took office, but we actually finished it up, yes.
Right.
We didn't start it, the process had become.
Okay. So I was just wondering how you feel about that decision now, because I know a lot of people have increased rates,
Well,
but
if we wouldn't have sold it, imagine what they'd be. So here's the situation. You got two things when you walk into office, which you're not really clear on. So we're going to play with the police pension fund, which had been underfunded for as far back as I could tell, to Paul Lenz was mayor.
okay.
So we're sitting at over $100 million in unfunded police and fire pension liabilities that are mandated by the state. And for whatever reason, when they passed these pensions, the state said, well, you can amortize them. So you can pay right down here now. And then, 20 years later, when we're all gone, the number's going to be way up here, even though it starts down here.
Right.
So we were at a line where revenue coming in and the pension liability was going to put the city under. We were at those two lines across where one didn't equal the other. Two. So that's the police pension. We got that massive problem going on. We hit the office. That's going on right now. We also come in, the city was notified by the federal government in 1993. You have to do sewer separation, means you have to remove your sanitary or, your house water and stuff away from your stormwater. They have to be separated. You can't treat it. Heavy rain events, there's overflow into the river, and that's terrible. So you have to separate those two things.
Right.
93. When I took office in 2013 was the first portion of sewer separation that had begun. And I think I can't remember, a 10-year window. There was a very small window from 93 to 2013. Nothing had been done except some research. I think our sewer bills were, I can't remember, 19, 20 bucks a month. I can't remember, there were maybe 3 million, 4 million in the sewer separation fund. And it was a $55 million project at the time.
Ooh.
The treatment plant was also in a poor condition and needed 7 figures worth of work, where actually like the wall had fallen down or there were some issues at the treatment plant. So there were a couple things you could have done. We could have massively raised taxes, which I won't do. We can talk about that. I'd love to later.
Okay. Yeah.
So we could either massively raise taxes, try to go out for a bond issue, which would have failed miserably, or the only thing the city could have done in that compressed time, because you can only charge. So for example, we can't charge Springfield to do our sewer separation. You can only charge your sewer separation over your amount of hookups. So I'm going to say Alton had, I can't remember, we'll call it around 12,000, maybe a little more, maybe a little less.
All right.
Someone's going to go, he's lying, but I'm going to be somewhere in the ballpark at around 12,000. So if you take 12,000 hookups divided by 55 million, how else do you get to your separation? And it's an
That's a lot
unfunded
of money.
mandate. And if you don't do that, the federal government will start taking your funds away from you. So we had two big problems that have been percolating for decades that hit at the same time. I took office. I can't remember Mayor Hakes was already in negotiations to sell the plant with Illinois American Water. And I want to say the negotiations were at around $9 or $11 million. Corporation counselor, I'm like, we're not doing that. Well, I said, I understand we got a problem, but we also have a problem over here. If this doesn't fix the problem, it makes no sense. So over a 2-year period, we went from around 11 million or so. And then the corporation counselor at about 25, 30 million said, you're getting greedy. I said, 30 million doesn't fix this problem, which is the police and fire pension fund.
Mm-hmm.
40 million. Then he starts, the corporation counselor, what are you doing? I said, it doesn't fix the problem. We ultimately wound up getting the sales price up from around 9 to 11 million when I took office to $54 million. The city did not take one dime of that money. All $54 million went to the police and fire pension funds, which dropped us down from around, I can't remember, 12 or 14 million on the $30 million budget on pension funds alone, dropped us down to a level payment of 8 million, 4 million, and 4 million for each. We could breathe. That's why.
All right.
Now, by the time the sewer treatment plant or separation gets done, it's still a $60 million project. The difference is when you sell Illinois American Water, they can spread your cost out amongst everybody that they cover in a vast region. So basically the whole state or wherever they cover. Illinois American Water Chicago could be helping us pay for it, which is good for us now. The problem is if another city has problems, we also chip in. So it helped us drop our prices because if the city would have had to maintain that and the federal government wouldn't back off the unfunded sewer separation project, the math on your sewer bills would have been crazy. And they're going to continue to go up because I don't even think they're halfway through the project yet. I don't believe.
All right. Well,
and I'm not happy with the Illinois American Water's treating our streets the way they do the project either, which would be a conversation we'll have when we get in office.
All right. That's great. So you brought up taxation, and that seems to be something you're passionate about. So talk about it. Talk about your stance on it and how you intend to make the average Altonian share less of a tax burden while still providing us with services.
The last 4 years we were in office, including the last year and a half of COVID, we did not raise the city's portion of the property tax levy because it was too high. In my opinion, it was too high, and we still got through. I fail to understand how they claim they have this massive surplus, which I left them with almost 6 million in the bank. They got it up to 7 according to Mayor Goins, or 7 point something. They got $21 million in ARPA funds, which they could use for income replacement. Why are they raising our taxes? They raised them twice in the last 4 years. This last one, if you look at your taxation bill, which everybody should have right now, across the board on all the properties, I went up about 10%. So basically the city raised your property tax levy approximately 1%. When you run the numbers on that, you're looking at just the city's portion, almost $380,000, almost $400,000 that the city decided to take away from its citizens, its business owners, that they could have reinvested into the community to give to the city, that Mayor Goins and Mr. Strable claim they have so much money. Why are they raising taxes then?
All right.
So, and now you'll give my commitment. I didn't raise them the last 4. I won't raise them the next 4. Because all it does is take money away. And if you think that if you're paying rent or your mortgage payment, the landlord's not going to eat that cost. It's going to get passed on. It's going to show up in higher rents, higher mortgage payments, which means with inflation right now, you actually have less money to spend. Business owners will have less money to hire somebody, invest in their business, or grow their business. So I'm terribly confused why They would get $21 million in ARPA funds, only fix 29 streets, what I've heard, 20-something streets, not do the infrastructure work that I think that they should be doing, and raise our property taxes when they claim they have so much money. Why would they do that?
And a lot of that ARPA money could be used to help homeless people too, as well. So
It could have been, yeah, it could have been used. It could have been used a lot of different ways. It could have been used for equipment. It could have been used on infrastructure. Could have been used on income replacement. It could have been used in a lot of ways. But again, I have a hard time seeing with the money they claim they have to keep raising our taxes.
I understand what you're saying there. So with the homeless thing, it's one of the things I'm very passionate about, and we disagreed with each other about the overnight warming locations. Like your administration and Jake Simmons did not seem to be against it. I touted his domestic violence walks as something I really liked, but his influence on the warming centers I did not like, and I appreciate the work that the Owls are doing, and I'm learning more about Sacred Spaces of Care, that grant-funded thing through Megan Tyler, and I believe Chief Ford is working on. I was just wanting to know, if you're mayor, how would you deal with that, and would you continue those programs?
I thought we only had an hour.
All right, lightning round it.
Yeah, so to really deal with the homeless situation, which has completely, significantly increased since I've left office.
Oh, across the whole country.
Yes. So it's a bigger problem than a municipality, and to put it on a municipality for one warming center, or I'm not really clear on that other program, or bringing in more homeless to our community without real solutions isn't fair to a municipality. We're not a wealthy city. We don't have the resources to deal on a big level for mental health, substance abuse issues. Those are long-term problems or situations that people need more resources than we can ever provide. So if you really want to deal with it, it's not the municipality, because we have to take care of everybody, not just the homeless. We have to take the calls when, like, for example, the booth house would release people in the middle of the night, and they would go out and they would bother a neighbor for whatever reason if they were intoxicated. The city gets all those calls, and it becomes very hard for a city to manage this. If you look at last year's calls for service, they went up almost 7,000 calls from 2023 to 2024.
Do you know the nature of those calls?
I do not.
Okay.
But it went up 7,000 calls for service.
That's a lot of calls.
I looked at numbers all the way back to 2017. It's the most calls for service by 6,000 from 2017 to 2024 in one given year. So to really deal with it, we're going to need the federal government. You're going to need resources from the state government to even put a dent in the homeless situation that we have.
And do you plan on trying to get those?
If it's available, yes. We would try to reach out and get some folks some help, because what we're doing clearly isn't working. When you drive around town, you see people sleeping under benches and tents, or not even in tents, but they're just kind of all over the place. It doesn't seem like it's safe to me.
I mean, it doesn't seem safe for them either. And that brings me to the the anti-camping bill. Are you familiar enough with it to give your opinion on it?
What's that?
The anti-camping bill, basically, officers making contact with people experiencing homelessness, and they bring Sacred Spaces of Care, and they work on finding them people that might care about them and getting them bus tickets to go back with family, or helping them find job training. And it's a grant-funded thing that is being done through the police department.
I'm not really honestly, I don't know that much about it to comment on it.
All right. Yeah, cool. I expect to have both Peter Huff and Megan Tyler in future episodes. So hopefully you'll catch those, and if you do win the election, you'll get a little rundown on what each perspective is. All right. So tourism is very important to me. Like I said, one of the reasons I moved to Alton was because all the cool stuff happening here. And I remember during your administration, I disagreed with you about Main Street, but also, am I wrong in saying that you were the one who helped the CVB grow into Great Rivers and Routes?
Yeah, we were part of that when it did take off. We were also part of getting the boats to actually leave St. Louis and dock here, and getting them committed to hotel rooms here, which is, hotel, motel tax, food and beverage tax, people spending money and spending time in our community.
Right.
That tourism is a big business.
Exactly. So I was just wondering how Great Rivers and Routes and Alton Main Street would play into a future of your administration through tourism.
Well, Main Street if they would focus on the Broadway corridor, which should this focus on the smaller business, and I see the CVB in a much bigger picture. Like you wouldn't want to see Main Street talking to Viking Cruise Lines.
No.
You'd want your city and your CVB. You'd want your Main Street dealing with Cory's malt shop or ice cream store. Whatever it be, slushy store, olive store, olive oil store.
Oh, we have a great olive oil
Yeah,
store. It's right
100%.
by CJ's Juicery.
That's why I
which
brought
is,
it up. So CJ's Juicery is another one.
Yep.
So you should have we've got, in my mind, we kind of got two distinct business districts, like your Broadway corridor, which we talked about. That remains, it's a question mark there anymore. And then you've got your belt line, which is your every city America chains, big stores, things like that. So there's
Right.
two different areas in here. So I see Main Street would be working more on these smaller end of things.
Right. And I know there was some issues about trying to move the farmers market to put a CVB building in there. And
Not with me. I was the one that I took Sarah actually when Rhonda was the park director. I actually walked her to the Haskell house and said, no, we're not going to charge them for the lot where they're at now.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you do approve of the continuing mission of both Main Street and Great Rivers and Routes.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, you have to, if you look at like the Great Rivers and Routes going down, say the Great River Road and the Grafton, that ties in. They're doing a World War II climb veterans
Yep.
thing, which is great. What
The
they
mayor down there is great.
Yeah. So, yeah, you have to do, I don't see how one could do both or one could do the other or both.
Right,
Makes
right.
sense.
I'm just saying, like, your administration is going to support each in their mission because I was talking to Alderman Strabel and he was talking about how Great Rivers and Routes is more of a regional thing.
It is now, yeah.
And that's what Mayor Goins said as well. And Mayor Goins looked at it as it's rising all boats together as a tide. And Strabel's looking at it as other cities are not paying their fair share into it to get the accolades that they're getting from it. So I was just wondering if either one of those fits the way you're thinking or if it's something you want to be in the driver's seat before you know what's up.
Yeah, I don't know. Of course, you would want a level playing field depending on who's spending the most money, who's getting the most attention. But I would agree that if we get more people coming to town, I would have to look at who's paying what. I don't, because that
Right.
merger, again, too, I had almost 25% of my administration was shut down because of COVID. And I believe Rivers and Routes was just getting underway when that happened. So I would have to look into it. But yeah, I think overall, especially with Brett was running Staywar,
Yep, Brett Sewar.
they were doing a terrific job. And we were getting a lot of business in town. And then Cory took over and he appeared to be taking it to the next level. And then everything
Yep.
got shut down.
Yep, yeah, because Cory was head of the Illinois Tourism Bureau, right?
That's
Like
correct.
he
Under
was
Rauner, I think. Yeah.
Yep, he was operating on the state level, and now he's down here doing his work down here. So, another thing about tourism that I think we're severely lacking is Halloween. Like, we have the oldest Halloween parade in the country.
100%.
We have Spooky Haunted Town. We have a dark history of murder.
Yeah.
We have the ghost tour shut down at Mineral Springs, which is a tragedy because we have Troy Taylor in this city, who's like this world-renowned paranormal guy who brings conferences to the area and stuff. So why isn't Halloween in Alton like a national thing? Why are we not the Salem of the Midwest?
Good question. I don't know. I've been part of the Halloween parade now for 30 years as an East End member, and it doesn't seem there's a lot of towns that have less than we do to do more with it. So I don't know if it's a community thing, if not people don't want to get involved in it. I don't know why.
What would you do to try to hype that though?
The Halloween,
Yeah.
I guess you would probably try to get together try to get the CVB and well, it's not CVB anymore, the Rivers and Routes.
Rivers and Routes.
Maybe possibly doing a joint venture with Main Street to get more attention on our Broadway corridor, like you mentioned, the haunted Halloween, things of that nature. So it would take it. My opinion, it shouldn't take much. It should be a lot more of an advertise. I don't know what regionally we're doing to advertise it outside of our town. We kind of sometimes think we're just a small community and we keep it that way. So I would have to maybe look at also an advertising budget. Hey, come to Alton and have Rivers and Routes put out, this is what we do.
Yeah,
You know, make that a brunt of an advertising campaign.
I would personally love that. And I think we would probably do good to like utilize our amphitheater for that. And another thing that a lot of people are complaining about, we don't utilize enough. So whenever,
We utilize it a lot more than when I took office.
yeah?
Yeah.
How do you want to utilize it more in the future?
Well, it was an evolving thing. When we took office, basically it was $5 Thursdays or Fridays.
Mm-hmm.
So we looked at the amphitheater. What can we do with it? So we got the community together and said, well, how could we change perception and change driving patterns? So we decided to go for bigger acts, because if you use local acts and you're doing food and beverage tax, sometimes the bars get mad because you're paying the bands and you're selling beer with their money. So you got to be wary of that. And then, so we decided to use it as a perception changer. So if you get, like, say, a Leonard Skinner to Charlie Daniels, those bands, people will come here that might not normally come here. If they have good experience, they'll come back. Then we also did more asphalt around there, so we're able to get a big giant regional food truck festival. We got the expo back. We put in a splash pad. We got the catfish tournament, which I believe ran consecutively with the expo, some mud volleyball, and we put in a big concession stand. I don't know if I said that or not. No. But as we were going, it was evolving. So every year we were adding things to it, more acts, having more power, more ability, drivability, that we can get bigger things in there and use it more than it was when I took office. And then now we've got the F1 boat, the boat racing's coming. So from where we started, from $5 Thursdays when I took office 8 years, 12 years later, it really took off. We also have the
Mississippi River Festival.
Mississippi River Festival.
They're doing that for the second year here.
That's great.
Yeah, a lot of people were worried it was going to go to Edwardsville, back where it started, and now it's back in Alton here for the second year. And like, the dudes running that, they're doing a good job. And I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see that prosper as well.
So sometimes it takes a while, but if you look back over a 10 or 12 year period from where it was to where it is now, things are being added and more things are being done, up to and including the cruise liners you're using as a home base.
Awesome. Well,
so we were trying to keep something constantly going and constantly adding things as we went.
Perfect. I do have one last question, and it's about things that we constantly add to and constantly build onto, and it's Gordon Moore Park. I know during your administration, a lot of cool things happened at Gordon Moore Park, but then the sinkhole opened and everyone learned that they're above a limestone mine, and I'm not going to say nobody wants to go hang out there anymore, but a lot of people have significantly changed their opinion of Gordon Moore Park. So I guess it's a double-sided question. First of all, what are you going to do to restore confidence in Gordon Moore Park, as well as what can be done with the other parks in our community?
Well, I was probably one of the better park mayors we've had in a long time, because we touched every single park in the city. And you name a park, I can name the amount of work we did it from Riverview all the way out through Rock Springs, through Salu, all the way out to Gordon Moore Park. Gordon Moore Park was a tragedy. I would like to get in office and find out what really happened, because when the city, they've been mining on there for a long time. And there's never been an issue out there until they started new mining, and now there's a problem. I do not like the way the city handled it, with a closed meeting, with no press allowed, and then they come out and then they turn everything over to the mine, and now we don't know anything. I do believe the mine is responsible for the damage. They need to help the city rectify the damage they did, both financially, with regards to perception of our park right now, and also make everybody whole. I mean, just look at this past summer. All the kids that usually count for revenue, the referee kids that do the games, the concessions, people work the concessions, the revenue lost from tournaments, the golf course lost revenue, the River Dragons lost revenue. So that park has a big impact on our community. Once it shuts down, that park was packed. I think we were putting, I'm trying to remember, almost 2 million cars a year through that park. That equals a significant economic impact in our community.
Absolutely.
And they need to make that right. So
can't argue that, honestly.
Yeah. I just think the way they handled it, to turn it over to the mine's PR firm.
Yeah, I did not like that.
And then you have a closed meeting.
That was not
And then you walk out of the meeting and go, the city just goes, we're done with it. Because we put a ton of money into that park, and it was going terrifically. I mean, you had Marquette was using it as their home field, and they could actually, I believe the soccer field was set up enough that had Marquette kept playing, they could have went all the way and played state tournaments here, which was terrific. The
tennis courts. You did some work on the tennis courts. I remember that.
The tennis courts were back up and running. We had the Oriental Garden, which the Fountainhead worked in 8 years. We got it going, and it was so successful that the Missouri Botanical Garden allowed us to use Ben Chu, who is a world-renowned Oriental gardenist, at no charge to come over and help us get our Oriental Garden back up to snuff. And then the Simpson Group working on the tennis courts. We also had, and I'm probably going to say this wrong, but we put a a park in front it was more geared for handicapped kids.
Yeah. The
So we put that out there as
the
well.
soft play area, like the
Sensory, yeah.
sensory park. That was the thing. Yep. That
So
was
we
the one.
added that, plus the turf fields, plus the tennis courts, plus the Oriental Garden, plus we did work on the boathouse, and we did some work all the buildings out. There was a lot of work went in that park.
I remember that. So that's why I asked you that.
It was all done on grants and volunteers and people contributing money. It did not hit general funds at all.
That's a really
Over-
that's an impressive thing that's out there. But
Yeah.
now the sinkhole opens up. You got to be kind of mad at that. You got to be like, "Oh,
Couldn't tell if I was going to yell and scream or cry. I mean, yeah, it was sad. And the communication was so bad. I think Channel 4 called me because the mayor's office did not respond.
really?
Yes, I went out and met them at the park because they couldn't get a response from the mayor's office.
That's bonkers. That's not good.
So I would like to get a handle on it, but I do think that with the damage being, even if it is repaired, and I don't know how that would happen, if it could happen, the perception of the park has definitely been injured or damaged, and I think the mine has some tough questions to answer.
I agree. So what would Alton look like if you're elected on April 1st? How would it change?
Communication will be better. I'm lucky enough that I have enough of a team. We hit ground day one. Once we're sworn in, asphalt gets laid the very next day. We're putting asphalt together the next day, immediately. Crime-free housing goes back into place once we're all appointed. So you won't have this like odd transition. We're walking in with experience. We're walking in with people that have done the job, know how to do the job. So you'll see an immediate uptick in the community day one. We've got it pretty well of a team already assembled.
All right. Well, good luck and glad to hear it.
Yeah, you're
Thanks
welcome,
again.
Cory. Good to see you again.
Always
As
a pleasure.
man.
All right, that should do it. Cool. We're groovy. That was fun. I like that.